Hi there, and welcome to another interview. Today, I got the fabulous Chuck with me, and I'm going to ask Chuck the same question I ask every single guest, and that is, hey, Chuck, why did you become carnivore?
So, it's a fairly long story, but it started when I was very young. I was probably, I would guess by 9 or 10, I was overweight, and I'm 59 now, and so we're going back a long time to a time in the U.S. at least where being overweight at that age was pretty uncommon. I was probably only one of a handful of kids in my school that really was overweight. And that just continued. By the time I was 14, I weighed about 242 pounds before I turned 15, and I'm 5'6", so I'm not 5'8" if when I'm wearing my boots, but I'm not particularly tall. So I was pretty big, and I did lose some weight in my late teens, but I immediately just began to gain that weight back, and as the years went by, I just continued to gain more and more. And I experienced what today is just commonplace. I tried everything, Stephen. I mean, literally every single diet you could ever imagine. And some of them I lost weight on. I've lost 40, 50, 60 pounds on a few different things. But I was always miserable during that time, right? Always starving, never felt good. And inevitably, when I would stop any of those diets, I would gain all that weight back and obviously more. Um, a number of years ago, and now it's been a fair number of years ago, I topped out somewhere around 275, which is a lot. And about 5 years ago, I discovered two things. One was intermittent fasting, with that I found a video by Dr. Jason Fung, and the other was keto. And what I call mainstream keto, or at that time, which was still a lot of vegetables, but no, low carbs, counting carbs, staying under 100 net grams, those types of things. And I really had some success with that. I got down to about 200 pounds. But what happens when you're still eating that? I fell into a pretty common trap, which is what I call the keto trap for keto products. We started buying keto bread, keto fat bombs, keto flour tortillas, and my weight stalled. And then within about a year or something like that, I gained back a good portion of that weight. And it really was incredibly demoralizing, right? I mean, it just crushes you because you had some success. The difference with that, though, and every previous diet was I felt good when I was doing it. And after muddling around for about a year or thereabouts, my wife discovered Dr. Kim Berry. And the video she was watching literally was talking about falling into the trap of counting net carbs and doing those types of things. And he talked about real whole food keto, counting total carbs, not net carbs, that type of stuff. And we immediately began, and my wife did it with me. We transitioned into I'm mostly carnivore, is like what I like to say. Probably 7-8 days of the week, I am pretty strict carnivore. And when I deviate from that, it's usually with things like blueberries or those types of things. I really don't eat, vegetables hardly ever, no grains, no sugars, nothing like that. And I mean, and that was really life-changing for me. This morning I weighed 155, so I'm down about 120 pounds. And I've been at this weight, which is really my target weight. I've been here for, I don't know, probably not a year yet, but I don't keep exact track of those kind of things. But so that's how I got to where I am today. I started initially to lose weight, and the change in my health, though, has been as radical as my weight loss at the end of the day.
Brilliant. fantastic summary. And I think people would really like to know what those health issues were. I mean, I will be honest and say I watched, it's not a spoiler alert because we're going to talk about it and it'll probably be in the thumbnail. But I watched a video of yours about gout and it really resonated with me, not because I've suffered from gout. I've been one of those lucky people that's never had that, but I've had plenty of people down the line that have had gout and they believe the mainstream media and think they can do very little about it. And when they try all the interventions, they don't work. But your living proof of that is true, but also that you can do something about gout. So if you don't mind, can we have a quick chat about gout?
Yeah. So actually, interestingly, the gout issue that I had was the final thing to resolve. So just quickly, without spending a lot of time here, one of the things that I was pre-diabetic, constantly had, I wasn't on prescription meds at all for that, but I was always constantly testing above 100 fasting glucose. I had high blood pressure, again, not on medication, but I went to the little kiosk in Walmart where you can sit down and check your blood pressure. And it was one of the things when I was muddling around for a while, it really kind of struck me. I sat down and checked my blood pressure and the machine popped up and said, seek medical attention immediately. And my blood pressure was like 190, 196 over 100 or some kind of crazy number like that. And then another number of minor issues, constant chronic sinus infections, things that even people wouldn't even notice. I used to have terrible dandruff and dry skin, right? All of those things are gone. My A1C, the last time I checked it, was 4.5. My cholesterol numbers were all normal. My blood pressure runs currently about 110 over 80 or thereabouts. All of those things happened pretty gradually throughout my weight loss. My gout was the last thing. And like you mentioned, I started having gout in my late 20s. And so well over 30 years. And every doctor I ever went to, when I asked about this, the story was always the same. I can give you a prescription, right? Is there anything I can do? Well, you can not eat high purine foods. At one point, I was almost a vegetarian. I ate meat once or twice a week, maybe. And during that time, I wasn't on prescription, and I had some of the worst gout attacks I'd ever had. Debilitating 3-week gout attacks, bedridden most of that time, on crutches during that time. And finally, after how many years, I relented and actually went on allopurinol. And I did that because my gout had gotten so bad, Stephen, that, it starts with most people in your big toe, those types of things. My gout had gotten so bad, I would have it in my high ankle. I would have it in my knees. I finally began to have gout in my elbows and my wrists. And I do IT work for a living. And I got to where, my wife could drive me to work and I hobble in on crutches and eat 4 ibuprofen every 3 hours, right? But it finally got to where I couldn't work a mouse and a keyboard. And when that began to happen, I realized, probably now about 13 years ago or so, I finally went to the doctor and got a prescription for allopurinol. And I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. And that never made my gout attacks go away permanently, but it made them less frequent and certainly less extreme. And so, I just kind of assumed that would be it. And once I began to do really carnivore, or mostly carnivore, I realized I just didn't have any gout attacks at all. And I got down to, I don't know, the 175 pound range, something like that. And I just stopped taking my allopurinol altogether. And I certainly still will have twinges. I've kind of learned what foods really will trigger that. And so there's still times when I will have, I'll feel it in my big toe or in my ankle on occasion, but nothing severe, really nothing even bad. It's more of a nuisance than anything else. And so that's what happened. The other thing that did take place was at my last doctor visit, which was now about 6 or 7 months ago. When he checked my uric acid level, it was 9.2, which he kind of freaked out about. And he loved all my blood work but that, and he wanted me to immediately go back on. But I said no. I said I really had lost a lot of weight coming into that range, which I know kind of can affect blood work. And so even though my allopurinol was 9.2, I wasn't having gout attacks. And when I was taking the medication, it was still in the mid sixes, the high sixes, and I was having gout attacks. So it wasn't just the fact that I had a high uric acid level that was the issue. And since my weight has stabilized, I've kind of hit my goal weight. My uric acid now averages about in the mid sixes. I've just been testing it fairly regularly. Now it will still hit 8. I was 8.1 this morning, but many mornings, I'll see 5.8, I'll see 6.5, those types of things, right?
Yeah, and that is one of the things that I find very attractive about my history as a qualified phlebotomist. I've seen hundreds and hundreds of bloods, and uric acid being high. If you look on the labs you're just about to give to the patient, you think, well, I better ask if they've got any gout. So many times I would say you got very high uric acid. Any gout? Any pains? And no, none at all. And I could look at another one with very low uric acid, and I could say, here's your bloods, any clinical presentation, anything you want to tell me? And they'd say, yeah, I've got gout. So I totally stopped believing that uric acid was a reliable marker, shall we say. And also, I'm not a big fan of saying high or low. I know we all speak this way, but when you say it's high, people think, well, yeah, that must be bad then. But it could actually be normal, especially when you're not eating fruit, you're not drinking alcohol, you're not supplemented with vitamin C, because uric acid is an antioxidant. So I think there's more to it. And you're proof of that. And that's why I liked your video, because you are literally proof that you can eat meat, which is allegedly a high purine source, and you can relieve your gout. So maybe it isn't meat that's causing the gout. Maybe it's other things in the diet. Do you have any particular views on what you've taken out that might be the thing that has really helped you?
Yeah, an interesting thing that I heard, and again, I none of this really kind of came together. I'd always heard just what everybody else had heard. High uric acid is the cause of gout. And actually in the U.S., and the numbers may be slightly different in the U.K., but a great point about what we consider high or low is the same way with cholesterol. I mentioned that earlier, my numbers are normal, but, normal considering that we've had generations of eating food that didn't exist 200 years ago, right? When I have a gout attack and I go to the doctor, they don't treat me for uric acid. They treat me for inflammation. And what I really think, Stephen, is the issue truly is inflammation above everything else. And so the foods that I've cut out that are highly inflammatory, vegetable seed oils, there's some things don't trigger me that other people do. Tomatoes, for example, but my wife, who does not have gout, if she eats raw tomatoes, and she didn't know this until we did carnivore, absolutely gets joint pain. She had terrible joint pain in one of her wrists, in some of her fingers. As long as she doesn't eat raw tomatoes, none of that exists any longer. And so, yeah, I don't drink alcohol. Last Father's Day, so, back in 2023, I had a big piece of New York style cheesecake and a glass of red wine. Next morning, I had gout pain in my ankle. If I eat too much processed meat consecutively, it will certainly give me some issues. So if I eat pepperoni or hard salami, 2-3 days in a row, I will have some issues with that. But one of the best things about carnivore was I didn't know any of that stuff until I actually cut all of those things out. And now when I eat a food, before it was just normal. I just felt like crap all the time. So you never noticed that, it was any worse than any other day. And now, when I eat certain foods, or I eat those foods too often, then I realize how it actually makes me feel. And so, yeah, I think the issue in large part really is inflammation. I think the high levels of insulin and glucose constantly is absolutely terrible for the body. Omega-6 fatty acids, which are in vegetable seed oils and almost every processed food, highly inflammatory. You could have never consumed more than maybe 6% of your diet 200 years ago in omega-6 fatty acids. And today it's, I don't know, the percentage is insane, 40% or maybe even higher than that in the US. So, and all of those things are highly inflammatory, and it just wreaks havoc on the body.
I think it shows how much you've learned since you've been eating this way. I had a little smile to myself because you say tomatoes and I say tomatoes. I used to run a rehab clinic for a long, long time, and tomatoes, as we say here, were always problematic in two ways. One, I would say to certain people, do you eat a lot of tomatoes? Oh, yeah, I love them. I say, right, well, if you stop them, you possibly will never come back here again. And they really were very, firstly, disbelieving, and secondly, reluctant. My wife's best friend's husband was working for the police force, and they walk the beat, basically, and he was having pains in his foot. And I said, give up the tomatoes. And he didn't believe it. And I said, you'll never know until you give them up what difference it will make. And if I got a text about 4 weeks later, text message saying, smart ass. And then basically he could walk again. And I think that's one of the things, and I know he watches this every so often. So I think people don't realize how problematic some foods are. And also when you say they're problematic, they're so brainwashed to believe, well, it's natural, it must be good, this can't be right. If you look at sort of native tribes, for instance, if they are eating tomatoes, they will take the skin off. They will be very, very careful with the seeds, and they cook them. So I would say it is a problematic food. And you're right about the inflammation. I'm sorry, I went off on a little bit there because that was important to me to mention that one particular fruit. It's very interesting about the inflammation because, again, you know, you're talking about high blood sugar, for instance, and that could be problematic. And the way you were talking about high uric acid being the thing that, you know, people think you're being treated for, but you're not, you're being treated for inflammation. Even if someone says you've got high uric acid, that's not the cause. High uric acid is a reaction to something. And that's what you're saying. You see, the cause is inflammation. Maybe the inflammation is making the uric acid go up to fight the inflammation because it's an antioxidant. So I love where you're coming from because obviously you've really got into it, and your wife as well has got into it. You've become a certified nutritionist, I think. One of the things.
Yes, I have. Partly because so I started doing videos. I'd never done YouTube, right, in the past. And I didn't know that anybody would ever watch my videos, to be perfectly honest. I mean, you know, I'm thinking, what? And I shot my videos, some of my older videos, you know, the lighting is terrible. I've just shot them on my iPhone at the kitchen table, including the gout video you spoke about. But as I started losing weight, I just thought, man, I wish I would have known this. That it really was life-altering in ways that's difficult to describe. My life is totally different in many, many ways today. And so, yeah, I started doing videos, and I thought, you know, if 10, 15 people watch, and shockingly, right, it was more than that, and eventually, and, you know, I still don't have a huge channel or anything like that, but if I would have spent the rest of my life speaking to people about what had happened to me, you know, how many people could I talk to, right? A few hundred, maybe 1,000, you know, and I've had over 100 and I don't know, 25,000 people watch my videos. And so I did it because I just wanted people to know. And I became a certified nutritionist. Basically, I don't have clients. I don't do that actively, but mostly just so that I could learn and then continue to talk in, not that the paper matters, but it does to people you don't know, right? And so it just adds a little more weight to what I say, and I just think it's important. I just want to do as much as I can to get people to know that. So, but yes, and high uric acid. Just also to your point.
Yes, the uric acid, the high uric acid point. If you could just go over that.
Yeah, I think so often we associate certain things and we call them high, as you mentioned earlier, just because uric acid levels are high do not mean they're causal. The same is true with cholesterol. We just associate high cholesterol with causing heart attack and stroke. But just because it's present doesn't mean it's a driving factor. I think inflammation, as I mentioned, it really is the trigger for gout. And I think in many ways, inflammation is the trigger for a lot of the issues that we have in the cardiovascular system. We associate high cholesterol with those things. But if you eliminate all the issues that drive that, chronically high glucose and insulin levels, chronically high inflammation in the body and those types of things, high cholesterol is not necessarily an issue at all. In fact, there's many, shouldn't say many, there are a number of studies that show, particularly in women over the age of 50, that high cholesterol is actually preventative in many things. So it doesn't actually reduce your life expectancy. It actually increases it if you're metabolically healthy, right? Yeah. And you don't have all those other contributing factors, which is exactly the case for my wife. Her cholesterol is much higher than, again, higher compared to what would be considered normal. We're good, but because she's healthy, extremely healthy, in fact, it really is not an issue.
Yes, and I think one of the things I'd like to just dial back to is the training as a nutritionist. Did you find the course materials a little bit difficult to swallow in some cases? Their recommendations?
Yes, I think that when you look at that type of material, what you'll see is generally they will talk about not adding sugar and exercise, but it's still all about balanced nutrition. It's still about getting enough fiber. Yes, generally speaking, that is still the case. Now in my course, whole food keto was, not totally objectionable as long as you were still predominantly eating, a lot of vegetables and that kind of stuff. But so generally speaking, that's the same as probably any type of courses that you would take today in the health or medical industry, right? They're going to be pretty radically different from carnivore, or mostly carnivore, certainly.
Yeah, maybe even radically different from reality. I mean, I remember.
Yeah, radically different from my reality in my personal experience. And today, it's not even just my personal experience. Literally, there's tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of people that have transformed their life. And yet, telling someone about what's happened, they still see that as almost not a possibility, right? It's so contrary to everything that we've been taught and heard for decades. Some people for their entire life, literally for their entire life, because they're younger than I am, that they just cannot, they just can't believe it's true.
Yeah, and I think they also can't believe that the news on the TV could possibly not necessarily be true, and they can't believe that pharmaceutical companies are not actually trying to cure you, but just sort of manage your symptoms, even though there's lots and lots of proof. Anyway, let's do some practicalities, because a few comments on YouTube say I've stopped asking this question, so I'm going to ask you: do you do 1 meal a day, 2 meal a day, and how much meat do you consume, do you think?
So interestingly, early on, I purposely did 1 meal a day for quite some time. And then I got to where I was probably alternating 1 meal a day, 2 meal a day. But at some point, Stephen, what I realized was now I say this and people object, but I say I no longer practice intermittent fasting. And then when I explain that, then some people kick back. Early on, I purposely abstained from eating. I no longer do that. I eat when I am hungry, and I may still only eat one meal a day. And so some people will say, well, then you're still intermittent fasting. No, fasting technically is abstaining when you would normally eat. Now, I do 2 meals or 1 meal. Normally, it's alternating because if I eat twice in one day, I'm often not hungry until the next day, until, 2, 3, 4 o'clock sometimes. And so when I eat that late in the day, I'm normally not hungry. My approach to that's pretty simple. If you're hungry enough to eat a meal, eat a meal. And if you're not, don't eat, right? And now, do I do that every day? No, but I do that most days. And how much meat? We predominantly eat, we eat a lot of meat, a lot of eggs, a lot of bacon. I don't really measure it. Like, I've never tracked macros. I usually say I'm something like 70-30. That's about what an egg would be, or that's what a ribeye would be. But I eat until I'm stuffed. I do eat whole cheese, or, real cheese, not processed. And I also use heavy whipping cream in my coffee. So, I do have dairy. We use butter, those types of things. That's primarily, the base of our diet. And that's most days. And again, no grains, no vegetables. I shouldn't say none. I had stuffed jalapenos yesterday. They're awesome, right? It may not be very good for us, but my wife makes them so with cream cheese, bacon, onions, cheese melted on top. So there are times when we deviate from that, but vegetables are not a part of our normal routine.
Thank you for that. And I always answer the comments and say, the more you do carnivore, the more you are less bothered about this particular question. And you will eat when you're hungry, and you'll stop when you're full. And you've hit on a little bit of gold dust for me, for something that I talk about when I mention fasting. But I just want to say, like, for today, and I did it for a video, we've got a leg of lamb in the oven. It's just me and my wife. I'm 59, by the way. She's 55. Not overweight. We haven't got any health issues, no medications at the moment, not for a long time since we've been low carb. And that leg of lamb is 2.7 kilograms. And that will give us probably 3 meals. It's okay. But that I never track. It's just a great big slab of lamb, and we put it in the oven. Now, if I really feel hungry tonight, I will chow down on a bit more. It's until I'm full. Now, I love what you said, and you're the first person to really talk about this, even though I've been banging on about this for quite a few years now. I'm not fasted right now. I'm not fasting. I'm not abstaining from food because I'm fueled. Now, when I go downstairs, if I'm hungry, I will eat. I'm not thinking, like, 4:30, it's my time to eat. It's 4:30 in the afternoon. I will eat that when I'm hungry. And then that food will see me through the day. So it's a bit like a car. If you fill up your car with gas and then you drive around, you're not sitting in your car every 10 minutes thinking, oh, I haven't got to fill up with gas. I haven't got to do that. I haven't got to do that. I'm going to abstain from filling up with gas. You are just fueled. And that's how you should think about your body. I've eaten this. It's great. Next time I eat, whenever. It's not a choice. And fasting is a conscious decision. If I did want to fast tomorrow, I would wake up, or the night before, and I'd say to Jane, tomorrow I'm going to fast. Well, that's abstaining. And then, I would probably eat more today, maybe just prime myself up a bit. Anyway, that was brilliant. So I think we've done about 40 minutes. I know we had a little bit in the middle where the internet went down. I've cleverly tried to edit it so nobody would know, but I thought I'd say that we did that. If someone was on the fence about trying carnivore, and I know they've just heard you say that your blood pressure has come down, your fasting glucose, your sinus infections have improved, your dandruff's gone, your gout has improved phenomenally, and they're still on the fence, right? They're still on the fence about trying this. What would you say to them?
Yeah, I think that if you just look around at nature, you realize that outside of animals in captivity, with few exceptions, there is no mammal on the planet that becomes obese and debilitated the way humans do. And the reason for that is because they eat what's appropriate. And when you go to the grocery store, the vast majority of what's in it did not exist 200 years ago. If you eat what's appropriate, the change that you will experience in weight and in health, in the way that you feel, the way that you think about food, all of those types of things, the change is so incredible, it's difficult to explain in words. And you can do this for 30 days. Most people that are going to do it for weight loss, they've tried all kinds of things. I mentioned this earlier. I've tried so many different diets. I did watermelon diet, Stephen, where I ate nothing but watermelon, right? I've done everything. I've fasted. I've done Slim Fast, Weight Watchers. Look, try it for 30 days, right? You'll get through the hard part and you'll begin to see radical differences in how you feel. And if you can get through 30 days, I'm telling you, you will not regret it, right? And what's a month, right? You've tried everything else. Try this. You're not going to die in a month because you eat meat, right?
That's brilliant. Yeah. One of the things on my app, which you can download from the App Store or the Google Play, is a 30-day thing. Every single day just talks about how to create a good habit, how to motivate yourself, talks about the science, all the things you can clear up. And it's so easy to do, really. I mean, I started 5 years ago on my 55th birthday. I decided to go carnivore from keto. Very similar story to you, like the keto treats were tripping me up. And I tried it for 30 days. And here I am, nearly 5 years later, best thing I ever did. And
yeah,
there's so much out there. There's so many success stories. And basically, Chuck, I want to thank you for that. I'm so pleased to hear that you've gone from being on crutches and in, terrible pain with gout. You've now seen that go and you haven't got that problem. And I'm so glad I saw your video. It was brilliant.
Thank you. Thank you. You look great for 59, by the way. So I also am 59. I've probably was a little rougher maybe on myself in my younger years, but for 59, I feel great. And I do things today at 59 that most people thought you could never do. So,
yeah. And I think one of the things people say, well, are the lights making you a bit shinier? No, my skin is really, really soft. It's really, really soft. And it's down to this way of eating. And I deliberately took a bit of video this morning because I had so many YouTube comments saying, oh, it's the lighting, you put a filter on, which I don't, by the way. The lighting's behind me. I have two white lights here. This is what I look like. And so I've done a video for those people that are saying you can't be 59. But these are compliments, aren't they? Basically, they're saying that diet is so good, you can't be that age. It's crazy. It's crazy. Anyway, thank you so much. Anyway, Chuck, we'll speak again soon, hopefully.
Yes, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I really appreciate you having me on, and I've had a great time.